Confidence. My name is Trish and I will be your singing teacher. Today we are talking Belt 101. We're going to try and cover all the aspects of belt that you need to know so you can belt safely and confidently. So let's jump right into it. So what is belt? At a very technical level, the naked vocalist says belt is a shortening of the vocal tract at higher pitches. Okay, so at a slightly less technical level, belting is using the power of your chest voice in your head voice. It is the expression of extreme primal emotion. When we sing, air passes through our vocal folds, which are housed in the larynx, and they vibrate. Now, the folds can thicken and thin, and when they are thin, you tend to sing higher, and when they are thick, you are singing lower notes. So, when the folds are thicker, they vibrate slower. Thick folds are used when you're singing in chest voice, and thin folds are used when you're singing in head voice. So if we go back to the definition that we heard, belting is using the power of chest voice in your head voice. That means that when we're belting, we need to have thick vocal folds. To quickly look at what bad belting is when you have strain in your voice. You're basically yelling with no intention. So if you have strain and you feel pain, you are not belting correctly. I will go into a bit more detail about how you belt correctly, but just know belting should never be painful. It should feel powerful, not painful. So there are several different aspects to belting. That is, it's primal. So it is a raw emotion that you find deep within yourself. You need to actually feel this raw urge, this primal urge to belt. Otherwise, you're not truly belting. Belting is also bright, so it's really high. You've got to get those cheeks high. If it's bright, it's belting. If it's dull and dark, you're not belting. Belting is open. So your mouth and your throat needs to be open. So get that jaw down and that throat open, so that yawn or laugh feeling you have, that is how open your throat needs to be when you are belting, and that mouth needs to be open too. Belting is high energy. If you don't have energy behind your belt, you are not giving yourself enough support, and you're going to start putting strain on your neck. So belting needs to have energy from the entire body. Turn that twanger on. Belting is really twangy. It goes hand in hand with the brightness, but the twangier you can make it, that really nasal sound, the better. Belting is a vocal quality that you assign to a certain section of your range. Now, where that section is going to differ from every person, because every person's range is different. No two voices are the same. So you need to find where you can belt in your range and really work to get that strong. And the last thing is, if you don't feel it, if you don't feel the emotions in the song, in the lyrics, the audience won't believe you, and the audience will just think you're yelling at them. So you have to be 100% committed to the song, to the story, to really belt well. And that's going to help protect you as well. Because if you're 100% committed to the emotions, you are going to be thinking low and primal. Low and primal. Be connected to the song, connected to the emotions, connected to the lyrics, and connected to the audience. You are so desperate to connect and convey what you need to convey the emotions of that song. The last thing I will say is belt is not a beginner quality. You need to have a solid foundation in all singing technique, and you have to have full control over your entire range before you do it. If you are wavering in anything, especially breathing and support, then you need to work on those before you start tackling this really extreme quality. There are some singers, however, where belting comes easier to them and they just do it. But I would really encourage them especially to make sure that they have a solid foundation, a solid singing technique foundation, so that their voices are protected and they know that they have full control over every aspect of their voice. So what are the basics that you need to have in place? You need to have good alignment. How are you standing? How are you holding yourself? Are you holding too much tension? Good alignment. Some might know it as posture or standing straight, but it's alignment. You have to have really good breath management, making sure that you are fully connected to your breathing, making sure you have everything open, and you have to have really good support. So you are moving any kind of support away from your throat and down into your abdominals. You are making sure that they are working well for you and that you can use your breath and support in conjunction with each other without having to think too much about that. They are habitual. And the last thing that is so important is you have to have a clean and clear tone. So tone is how your voice sounds. So everyone's going to have a slightly different tone or timbre, but it has to be clean and clear. It has to have a ring to it. And the only way that you can do that is through scales. Running scales up and down your range, making sure that you have a smooth transition through all your registers and that you have no bumps, you have no areas where there's massive gear changes, areas where you might crack. It has to be smooth. It's really tedious. I know running scales is tedious. Tell me about it, but it's vital. They are so important in creating this clean, clear sound that's going to give that solid foundation in order to build belt on top of. I want to talk briefly about vocal support. Vocal support is not supporting in your abdominals. Vocal support is everything you do in your throat and everything you do in your larynx and mouth. So that means that you are getting good adduction from your vocal folds. So that means that they're closing nicely. They're not slammed together, and they're just sitting nicely and able to vibrate, creating that clean, clear sound. That's what you're doing when you're running those scales, trying to create that clean, smooth sound. Is you're trying to get your vocal folds to close fully, but not tight together, but close fully, so that you get full vibration, full ring. Also, have an understanding of vowel modification. So when we're belting, especially when we're belting really high, we need to change the vowels slightly. We need to modify the vowels. So we might have an O that we need to change to an R, or an E that we need to change to an A. For instance, a really good example is in the song Defying Gravity. She sings, "It's May." So instead of going, "It's me," that's not gonna, she can't belt that. Me, you're too spread. But if she sings what they usually get the alphabets to sing, "It's May, it's May," you get a nice pingy, ringy sound that's going to really go out, and she's able to support that note fully, especially because at the time she's flying up in the sky. But that's a really important thing about belting is vowel modification. Sometimes you need to change the vowel slightly in order to really get a good grip on the note and really get it in tune and solid and strong. Which leads me into my next point that I want to talk about, which is imagination. So with vowel modification, you change the vowel and sometimes you change the word. So for taking that Defying Gravity for an example, you've changed me to May. Now, if I just sing, "It's May," then yeah, the audience is going to know that I'm not singing "It's me." But if I sing, "It's May," and I have the conviction, and I am imagining and I'm convincing myself and the audience that I am singing me, and I quickly at the very end switch to the E, May, then the audience will believe that I am singing me. They will hear me, they won't hear me. Some singers are better than others, so there are singers who, yeah, you're definitely singing May. But if you have the conviction that you know I am singing this word, and you're going to believe that I'm singing this word, 9 times out of 10, your audience will believe that you are singing what you want them to sing, what you want them to hear. When it comes to singing, imagination needs to come over intellect. If we let our intellectual brain do all the thinking, we start to overthink singing. But if we let our imaginative brain, our imagination brain take over, then singing becomes easier. We are actually singing as storytellers. We stop thinking too much about technique and we start telling stories. We start wanting to convey emotions. So it's much better to sing from a place of imagination rather than a place of intellect. Although intellect does have a place in singing, but I really like the saying that singing or art in general is informed by science. Singing should be instinctual, primal, emotional. But having said that, it is really important to know how you sing, how things work, but not let that get in the way of a performance. That's okay for like a classroom or a rehearsal room at the early stages. We're trying to figure out a song, you're trying to work out how to sing it best. But once you get to a performance, if you sing from a technical standpoint, you're going to come across really boring, really dull, and you're going to probably turn your audience off. But if you come across as someone who is fully engaged with what they're singing, fully engaged in the story, in the world of the song, then the audience will be engaged. You'll draw them in. 9 times out of 10, I'd much rather hear an okay singer who is convincing as hell at storytelling than a technically good singer who's boring. It's just the way it is. So as singers, we are storytellers. We have lyrics. We tell stories. So we need to tell those stories. We're not just there to make pretty sounds. So that's our number one job, is to tell the story that the composer wanted us to tell. So there are a lot of things that you can do to access your imagination, to access your impulse, your drive, your singer's impulsive drive. And one of them is just to walk around the room and just randomly call out, hey, or hey you, or hello, or whatever, trying to get the attention of someone across the room. So really engaging that impulse, that need to communicate, which is what belt is. Belt is a need to communicate. So if that's the early stages, that you just walk around the room and then suddenly go, hey, oh, you dropped something or whatever, giving yourself an impulse and really creating this need, this want to communicate something to somebody. As I say, and that is what belt at its heart is, the need to communicate something. Without impulse, without imagination, belt would sound really restricted, really contrived. You're just belting for the sake of making a loud noise rather than belting because you have a legitimate reason to belt. So make sure that you always have a reason to belt. You're not just going, this sound will impress people. It's not going to work. Believe me, I've done it before. I was one of those belters who's like, I know I can belt. I don't have to work too hard to belt. I'm just gonna make these loud sounds and people will be impressed. It stops becoming impressive very quickly. So make sure you always have a legitimate reason and you feel that legitimate reason to belt. Otherwise, you're not really belting. You're just shouting at people, and people don't like being shouted at. There is an extra layer of support that you need to think about when you're belting. So you have your abdominals, they're kicking in. You've got a really nice press and spread, which I've talked about in the singing basics video that I did. So you have that, and then you have this extra layer, and it's called anchoring. So anchoring is your shoulder blades. So imagine my hands are my shoulder blades. So they are going to push down and in, down and in. And they're going to give this extra layer of support for me when I am belting. There's another thing you could do. You could really get down and bend your knees. A lot of singers really bend into their knees to give an extra bit of support. And anchoring is a really good way of doing that. So pressing down and in of your shoulder blades will give you an extra added support to help you belt safely. Belting has a particular onset that is associated with. So there are 3 different onsets: an aspirate, simultaneous, and glottal. So an aspirate is that breathy voice, that breathy start to every sound. Simultaneous is the breath and the sound coming together at the same time. So it's how I'm speaking to you now. And then there's glottal, which is what belt needs. Glottal is the sound comes before the ear. It's ah, ah, ah. It's really harsh, but it's well supported. It's well supported here, and it's well supported in your abdominals. So make sure that you are giving that more punchier sound. So when you are going around doing that impulse exercise, the hey, make sure you're doing it with a glottal onset. So you're going hey rather than hey. It's over here. Hey you. Make sure it's really punchy. And the last thing I want to talk about is the singer's kinesphere. So this is the space in which you inhabit. Rather than projecting the sound out forward, you fill the space that you inhabit. I have talked about the singer's kinesphere in previous videos, so go back and have a look. I've mentioned it a few times. But it is the space that you inhabit, and you fill that space rather than trying to project your sound forward. Well, I hope you learned something today for this Belt 101. I will do some more work on belt, but for now, I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye!